Welcome to Code of Conduct training. The objective of this training is to develop your understanding of our Code of Conduct. How we work, what we value. In this session, we're going to look at what we mean by ethics and values in Balfour Beatty and how we put these into action in our everyday life. Balfour Beatty has a clear Code of Conduct that sets out the principles and ethical behavior the company values and wants us all to uphold. The company's core values are integrity, teamwork, excellence, and respect. This is how we explain our values. We always do what is right. We are better together. We strive to improve and exceed expectations. We appreciate others and care about the wider communities. Our Code of Conduct explains how applying our ethical principles helps us to uphold these values. Let's look at a range of situations and behaviors, and you can decide what the right thing to do is. We are not implying that all people are dishonest, but you may see things going on around you that, until now, you have turned a blind eye to or have felt unable to report. Failure to uphold our ethical standards may, in some cases, result in you losing your job, and in extreme cases, serious penalties, potentially including criminal prosecutions, for you and the company. If you are concerned that someone else's behavior may not match up to our standards, then please come forward. Speak to a Balfour Beatty manager, or, if you are not comfortable doing so, use the Ethics Helpline. Now, let's take a look at a scenario.
You are an hourly worker who takes some time off. When filling out your next timesheet, you are tempted to record hours not worked. After all, you reason you work harder than many co-workers and probably deserve a break. Would you do it? Once? Twice? When would you say no more? If you were this person's manager and were aware of his actions, would you approve the timesheet? Falsifying documents of any kind, including timesheets, is fraudulent, unethical behavior.
Principles of ethical conduct. Our 4 key values, integrity, teamwork, excellence, and respect, are reinforced by a set of 10 principles of ethical conduct. Here are the first 6 of our 10 principles. 1. We behave with honesty and integrity. 2. We comply with the law. 3. We don't tolerate bribery, fraud, or any other form of corruption. 4. We don't misuse company property or use it for our own benefit. 5. We treat our colleagues and third parties with dignity and respect. 6. We care about the communities in which we work and the environment we impact. 7. Each one of us is an ambassador for Balfour Beatty, so what we say and do reflects on the company. 8. We don't bully, harass, or discriminate against colleagues, including our subcontractors, their employees, other third parties, or members of the public. 9. We require our subcontractors and suppliers to uphold these principles too, just as they benefit from them. And 10. We always do the right thing and never compromise on our ethics to get the job done. Let's take a look at another scenario. Bill is the superintendent on a large job, which includes penalty clauses for the company if completion is delayed due to factors under our control. In the early days, the subcontractor's work was not up to standard, and our superintendent, Bill, would not sign it off. This caused delays and frustration to all on the site. The problems were eventually resolved, and the subcontractor offered to lend Bill some machinery to help him build an addition to his home. Bill gratefully accepted the offer. Slowly, a better working relationship developed. However, as the weeks pass, the pressure to deliver the project on time increases, and standards are slipping again. Bill calls a meeting with the subcontractor to discuss the problems. In the meeting, the subcontractor constantly refers to their good working relationship and how he helped Bill with the addition to his home, and how that must count for something. He also reminds Bill that any further delays will impact badly on Bill as well as on the subcontractor. Bill faces a dilemma and wonders if accepting the favor has now placed him under an obligation to the subcontractor. What should Bill do? 1. Threaten to fire the subcontractor for trying to influence him improperly. 2. Negotiate a deal with the subcontractor, identifying the most critical defects, for example, those with obvious health and safety implications, which must be put right and sign off any less major issues. 3. Stand firm and refuse to sign off the work until it is completed properly. Or 4. In the interest of the overall project deadline, sign off on the work, but make it clear doing so does not place him under any future obligation to the subcontractor. The correct answer is 3. This is the only acceptable course of action. Let's go back and look at Bill's options. For response 1, if there is a clear case of a subcontractor trying to bribe you or a member of the team, then you should report it to your line manager or via the ethics helpline. Response 2, at first, may seem like a way out for everyone, but it still breaks our code and is allowing poor standards from the subcontractor to drag our standards down. And of course, we have a duty to the client to deliver what was specified and paid for. And response 4 is also incorrect. This is not acting with integrity. It is compromising our standards, and Bill is being influenced by the favor he accepted from his subcontractor. Bill is in danger of putting his and the subcontractor's interests before those of the company. Bill has been naive at best in accepting the favor from the subcontractor, without thinking there may be consequences down the line. However, he must not let this sway his decision or affect his judgment. Bill needs to think of the project, the client, the end users, and of course, Balfour Beatty. Turning a blind eye to defects and signing off on substandard work could, potentially, lead to unforeseen health and safety issues, as well as litigation or prosecution, financial penalties, damage to our reputation, and fraud against the client. What other issues might arise from this or a similar situation? If you saw this happening, would you have the confidence to speak up? Balfour Beatty wants you to speak to your manager or another Balfour Beatty manager. If this is not possible, use the ethics helpline. How would the situation have changed if Bill had asked to borrow the subcontractor's machinery? Bill would certainly have made things harder for himself. This would have given the impression that he was seeking some sort of bribe to sign off on substandard work. Referring back to our principles, this case centers around honesty and integrity, not tolerating bribery, fraud, or any other form of corruption, not letting acceptance of gifts, hospitality, or other favors distort our judgment or cause us to act against the company's best interest or values, and always doing the right thing, never compromising on our ethics to get the job done. I hope you can recognize the type of behavior the company expects you to uphold. You should also know that if you do speak up, the company will support anyone who raises a concern in good faith. If you are unsure of what to do, ask yourself, is it legal? You don't have to be a legal expert, but you should challenge something if you think it may be illegal. Is it consistent with our values and code? Consider if it's what we stand for, if it would be detrimental to Balfour Beatty, or if you'd be the only one to gain, then the answer is probably no. Other key questions to ask yourself include, am I personally comfortable with it? If you have to convince yourself that your intended action is right, then it probably isn't. So seek advice. Would I be happy reading about it in the newspapers? If you'd hide your actions from your family, your manager, or the media, then it's probably the wrong thing to do. It may be illegal and could damage both the company's and your own reputation. Here's what Andrew McNaughton has to say. I urge you to challenge any unethical, dishonest, unacceptable, or questionable behavior, and to speak up when you see things that don't match our standards. How we work, what we value. We're going to continue our look at our code and how we apply our ethical principles to real-life situations. Have you ever faced an ethical dilemma? Let's look at a couple of situations and see how they link back to our code. 2 months ago, you needed additional carpenters in a hurry. A local subcontractor offered immediate employees at a reasonable rate. You were aware of rumors regarding the immigration status of some of this company's workforce, but the need was urgent. Today, you've discovered that some of the employees may not be in the U.S. legally. Is it a problem? Yes, it is a problem. We want to work ethically, and our code says we always comply with the law. We also must be protective of our reputation. Dealing with companies that could expose Balfour Beatty to breaching laws could seriously damage our reputation. Here's another case. On site, you are working alongside workers from a subcontractor. They are good workers, but tend to keep to themselves. You hear they are being paid less than the minimum wage and are required to work on other projects on weekends. However, because the subcontractor keeps their documents and helps them with housing, they don't complain. What will you do? This example is contrary to so many of our principles. We comply with the law, including minimum wage and working time regulations. We treat our colleagues and third parties with dignity and respect. We require our subcontractors and suppliers to uphold these principles too. We always do the right thing and never compromise on our ethics to get the job done. In this example, you should report it immediately to the project manager, the superintendent, or to the ethics helpline. Not speaking up would certainly be compromising our standards and values. Now let's look at a longer scenario. The ABC Tower project has progressed very well, and following the early completion of a specific element of the project, the superintendent, Chris, decides that everyone can finish early one Friday afternoon. On the morning of that Friday, one of the experienced workers on site, John, mentions to Chris that some surplus materials on the site have been left over. John suggests to Chris that he and a few other friends could make use of the Friday afternoon by taking the surplus materials to finish a driveway that Chris has started building at his home. John points out that the materials are of no further use on the site. They have to be cleared away soon anyway. He says he could move them at the same time as taking other surplus materials to the scrapyard. This way, everybody wins. Chris should stay on site to sign everybody off at the correct time so that he isn't seen to be working on his own driveway. John clears the site, taking materials to the scrapyard, but he takes far more from the site than he told Chris, and when he's paid in cash for the materials, he pockets most of it and sets aside only a small amount to hand over on Monday morning. John and the other employees use the rest of the afternoon to finish Chris's driveway. When they're done, John decides to keep the van over the weekend instead of returning it. He thinks that after all the good work they've done, Chris won't mind him using the van over the weekend. John uses the company van over the weekend, goes out in public, and has a great time. On Monday morning, he returns it and hands in some of the money from the scrapyard. Later that day, he's called to Chris's office. Chris receives a complaint from a member of the public who witnessed what they described as outrageous, loud, and drunken behavior. Someone in a Balfour Beatty truck. This conduct brings shame on the reputation of Balfour Beatty. The person also suspects that it was probably paid for by the client, or maybe even the taxpayer. John starts to justify his actions. Chris isn't buying it. Accusations fly over this and past behaviors. Each argues that the other was equally to blame and threatens to expose examples of past misconduct if any action is taken. Let's review this list of accusations against Chris and John. There are several issues with this scenario. In this case, each person is compromised because of the hold the other party has over them. For example, Chris would like to take some action about the misuse of the van, but feels compromised because John was partly taking it to work on Chris's house with materials stolen from the site. He might want to ask John to take the hit for using the van and keep quiet about the driveway and the materials, in return for Chris not reporting him for the ongoing theft of the money for the scrap. Doing the right thing is not always easy. It can be hard to go against what your colleagues might suggest, but you can make a choice. So choose not to compromise your integrity. Our code is very clear about the standards of behavior expected. Here's a summary of some of the key messages from the code. Fraud, deception, and dishonesty. Even a minor fraud case is a crime and can destroy our reputation, so never think, just this once, or everyone does it, so it must be okay. Bribery and corruption. We would rather miss out on business than compromise our integrity, so always make sure your actions are transparent. Gifts and hospitality. Is it a gift or a bribe? Is it hospitality or persuasion? You need to be objective and think about how others might regard it, or how a newspaper might report it. Conflicts of interest. Avoid competing interests or divided loyalties that could put you in an awkward position. Seek advice. Don't wait until the situation has become a problem. As you've seen, our code gives us all guidance, but it would be impossible for it to cover every possible situation. So you need to understand it and be able to apply the spirit of the code and its principles and values to any difficult situation. Most people don't set out to become involved in something unethical. Often one small event leads to another, and before they realize it, they are faced with a serious dilemma. Red flags give you an early warning of something unethical. Look out for them, and then act appropriately. Here's our list of red flags. No one's going to know.
Everyone does it.
Well, maybe just this once.
It's not against the law.
It's a victimless crime.
What's in it for me?
Don't worry. It's part of the culture.
Shred that document.
We did not have this conversation.
It doesn't matter how we win it, just as long as we do win.
Recognizing these and other similar warning signs can help you avoid getting involved in unethical behavior, and therefore avoid the serious consequences that can follow. Let's review another scenario. Balfour Beatty is the appointed facilities manager for a science research complex. A building such as this requires many teams, some direct employees, and some working for subcontractors, to keep it running at its peak. One day, Elaine, a Balfour Beatty employee, sees a member of the subcontractor's cleaning staff being yelled at and intimidated by his supervisor. The supervisor also works for the subcontractor. When he leaves, Elaine makes sure that the man, Daniel, is okay, and expresses her disgust at the supervisor's behavior and bad language. Daniel tells her it's normal. The supervisor treats them all in the same way, and says, "It's best just to keep your head down and do as you're told." He explains that the supervisor wanted him to work extra hours today and threatened to fire him when he said he couldn't. Elaine advises Daniel to report the supervisor's bullying behavior, but Daniel is adamant this would definitely cost him his job. He tells Elaine not to worry and hurries off. Elaine faces a dilemma. She is shocked by what she's seen and heard. She wants to report it. Surely, subcontractors can't behave or treat their employees like that. But on the other hand, she has to think about the consequences. She doesn't want to be the cause of Daniel losing his job. What should Elaine do? 1. Nothing for the moment, but wait and see if anything similar is repeated. 2. Inform the supervisor that his behavior has been noticed and he should improve it. 3. Talk to others to assess extent of this behavior. 4. Report it immediately via the ethics helpline. Or 5. Report it to her managers so they can raise it with their counterparts at the subcontractor. The best course of action would be either number 4 or number 5. If Elaine isn't comfortable with reporting it to her managers or feel they won't support her, she could use the ethics helpline. Behavior like this is a clear breach of our code. If you are concerned that someone's behavior may not match up to our standards, please come forward. Remember, if you raise a concern, in good faith, about unethical or illegal conduct, then there will be no repercussions or reprisals for you. This case centered on the principles of honesty and integrity, treating our colleagues with dignity and respect, not tolerating bullying, harassment, or discrimination against colleagues, including our subcontractors' employees and other third parties or members of the public, requiring our subcontractors and other third parties we work with to uphold these principles too, always doing the right thing, and never compromising on our ethics to get the job done. Let's recap on our principles. Here are the first 6. 1. We behave with honesty and integrity. 2. We comply with the law. 3. We don't tolerate bribery, fraud, or any other form of corruption. 4. We don't misuse company property or use it for our own benefit. 5. We treat our colleagues and third parties with dignity and respect. 6. We care about the communities in which we work and the environment we impact. Here are our final 4 principles. 7. Each one of us is an ambassador for Balfour Beatty, so what we say and do reflects on the company. 8. We don't bully, harass, or discriminate against colleagues, including our subcontractors' employees, other third parties, or members of the public. 9. We require our subcontractors and suppliers to uphold these principles too, just as they benefit from them. And 10. We always do the right thing and never compromise on our ethics to get the job done. Let's take a quick quiz on our code of conduct. Question 1. What are the 4 values that underpin our code? Answer: integrity, teamwork, excellence, and respect. Question 2. Who does our code apply to? Answer: everybody. Question 3. What is a red flag? Answer: a clue that something against the code might be being suggested. For example, no one will know, or it's only this once. Question 4. Which of the following, if any, are against our code? The superintendent accepting a cash thank you from a subcontractor for choosing them for the next project. Someone constantly making inappropriate remarks to a female colleague. Borrowing company tools, equipment, or transport for personal use. Answer: all of them. All of these situations are against our code. Question 5. What are 4 questions you should ask yourself if you are unsure of what to do? Answer: is it legal? Is it consistent with our values and our code? Am I personally comfortable with it? Would I be happy reading about it in the newspapers?